Greetings and welcome to another edition of Celebrating Changemakers, where we get so excited about helping more people to know about the amazing changemakers that are making a difference today. And today I'm so excited and so honored to have a good friend and longtime associate with me today, Martin Brossman. Thanks for being here, Martin.
I am so excited to have this conversation that might have been in the works for 10 years. We'll explain as we go on.
Exactly, or perhaps even more, because I know you have a lot of experience that you're going to share that got rolled into a very special book that you've written. So
Right.
please tell everybody about your book.
This is my second non-business book. I've written about 5 books in, I don't know, it's quite a few years. Taboo, The Lost Codes of Men. It was 10 years in the thinking, suffering, working, and polishing from the first time. And my first book, even longer, much longer than that. I have to look up the exact date, which was Finding Our Fire, about leading a men's group for over 12 years.
Incredible amount of time and energy that you've put into this. So, I know that it's an important book because, I have sons, I have grandson, I have brothers, and I know that there's been some serious difficulties when it comes to men, especially in this country, but perhaps even around the world. So please tell us a little bit about your backstory. What made you write this book?
Well, it's pretty interesting because back before 1995, which was the year when my practice marriage ended, I had done a lot of personal development work with men and women. And somebody said, I think something's missing for you, and you need to read the book Iron John by Robert Bly. Now, if you don't know it, Robert Bly is a famous American poet, and he had done all types of workshops on poetry and fairy tales, and noticed that most of it was addressing women, and most of the people showing up were often women. And he thought, why isn't there something for men? Because there's something missing there as well. And he found the story Iron John. He wrote the book, and then he published it. And I'm quite dyslexic, so I chose to listen to it on cassette back then. I had a cassette player in my car. I'm working at IBM. I don't know exactly the date, somewhere between 91 and 95. And I'm listening to this story and thinking I've done a lot of work on myself. And then he's just telling this story and tears are running down my face, and I'm very uncomfortable because I have no idea what evoked these emotions. But I do know something was not working for me, but I didn't know where to go with it. And after the marriage ended, I met a guy named Fred Boyles. He had a group called the Samurai Accountability Team. Someone invited me to, and we meet on a regular basis. And the whole idea was, if you gave your word on what you do, and if you didn't, you donated money into a pool that was then used to give to a charity or something. So it was really useful for me, giving extra structure, especially while I was building up my coaching business. And I reached out to him, and we started talking, and I said, I'm on my own, and I've done a lot of personal development and read Iron John. And the truth was, it talked about the importance of mentors, but the truth was, in the corporate world, it was so competitive, I really never found anyone like that. And that was missing. And he said, I'll be that guy. And I'd like you to, at the end of the summer, come to this men's personal development weekend in Los Angeles. And the key is, I'll meet with you once a week and we'll talk. And I thought, that's kind of strange, because I never thought of that as much. I knew there was a missing piece, but he's offering to be kind of a mentor along the way. He's offering, but he says, I want you to do this, and I want you to raise money independent of what you're doing. So you had to raise money. I'll help you raise money so it doesn't have impact on your life. All this, long story short, and it's in the book in more detail. I thought, this is not a problem because no one's kept their word like that. No one's saying, Gavin, especially in the corporate world, there was always good excuses and committees and so forth. And then we start getting closer, and not only kept his word, but when he broke it, he cleaned up the issue. And I'm getting pretty nervous because I'm going to this personal development, and I had always done it with men and women of any sort. And I couldn't explain the unconscious fear I had of being in a space with just men. I could not. Now I understand in their words, and explains it in this. But I was really pretty terrified. And we talked about it, and he said, well, this is sort of a modern day rites of passage. And do you think any young man facing his own rites of passage was comfortable? And I thought, no. In fact, in the book, it talked about if he didn't break from the mother. And it would also be a break, not a let's have a cooperative love fest, a break from the mother. It never happened.
Wow.
And really, in the history of mankind, young men were never just excited about any rites of passage, because it was to be engaging, it was to be confrontive, it was to be real transformational. And he described it, and I went, but I've read about this, but now I'm experiencing it firsthand. And a lot of this is in the book and important, but what I realized is almost in the history of mankind, we've had some form of socialization to support young men to mature. And I'm proposing we've gutted our society of almost all of those.
Oof. Yeah.
And unless you go to the dark side where you have gangs that create your family and then mentoring towards violence. But as far as in the corporate world, in the individual world, and all the above, we've removed those. And I'm the laboratory of this. This is not like I'm looking over there and studying men. This is my experience, observation. And so it took not just the time to produce it, but the kind of emotional courage to put this out in the world as well, because this is like what I think of original science. Original science, they didn't go to the encyclopedia and study everything and have statistics. They went, let me test this out. Let's see, it doesn't kill me. Maybe we could use this. And I love science. And that's really, we've gotten away from the experiential. I mean, you go to the doctor, it's how many doctors does it take to change a light bulb? And we need 5 more tests. We've lost the experiential work, which is the soul work. And that's what I worked on. I really mapped out what were the missing pieces. And then I took on each one of them, making myself the laboratory and then observing it with other men as well. And that's why I believe this is one of the most important books of our time period, because it's not me telling you what to do. It's not me telling women what they're supposed to do. It's here's my experience. Here's my direct observations. Here's what I think's missing in our culture. And I want to tell you, a young woman read this book. She works at a restaurant we go to, and we talk back and forth. She goes, I want to read that book because she said, when I go out with guys today, it almost feels like going out with one of the girls. I said, you need to read my book. And so when I got it, I said, I'll loan you a copy to read. And the next week, I went in to buy dinner there, and she said, I read it cover to cover. I'm going to read it again. I want to write a review. And I said, could you tell me something that got your interest? She goes, no, this is really deep. I mean, you could see with an open mind how profound something like this can be. And she said, I'm really starting to understand something about men and my father. And when I read it, I never said, yeah, but. And I want to tell you that meant so much to me, because she saw that I had worked to stay as authentic as possible instead of just platitudes. See, everyone's like, this is an I book.
Yes, it
we
is.
Can let us hide out behind something and stay safe. Men need to do this, or women need to do this, and I am a social worker or something. Nothing wrong with that, but this is roll up your sleeves and be vulnerable. I've just done it. And I expect you to understand the risk and what it takes. And
yeah, Well, and I want
Yeah.
to point out something that I found to be very cool in the book. And I loved your story about how it happened, because you've actually created a diagram in there about how men need to go through this process for maturity. And that should be in every psychology book in the country. How did you,
Well, that's the most interesting. I'm seeing if I'm going to get my other book. Hold on a second. Here's the first book. And basically what this is 12 years of leading a men's discussion group called the Men's Inquiry. That's a whole nother story. And a guy got the book and read it. It's not an easy read. You see, it's dense. It's dialogues from different men. I had to work to make it confidential, huge amounts of work. In fact, the original document's twice this, and then I pulled out what I thought was the core. So he read the book, said, I want to meet you at Panera Bread and go over it with you. And we met at Panera Bread at North Hills in Raleigh. And he said, I've read the book and I don't get it. And I said, well, this is it. And then all of these ideas came to me. It was so weird. It was like the whole gestalt came to me at once. And it's the idea, unless someone asks, sometimes it doesn't come to you. It really felt profound. And then I took a napkin and pulled it out. And I said, there are 4 components that young men need to support them to mature. And I drew the triangle. And this isn't completely new or anything like that. You can find pieces everywhere, but I'd never seen it put together quite in this way before. I'm not claiming that this is the first time, just like almost nothing in science was the first time. Before Galileo, there were other people and so forth. But I drew the thing on the table and I said, they need these components. They need sufficient fathering. They need sufficient mothering. They need a rites of passage with challenges and blessings where they find their place among other men, not just in society, but that so they can enter society. And then they need mentoring and mastery where they get the core food from working with another man close up that teaches delayed gratification and all these components. And it all was like a gestalt. And again, anyone can say, well, yeah, but this came from this. And yes, of course, this is a subjective anecdotal experience like real science originally was. You see, and a woman worked with me on editing that helped out with it. And I said, I want to make sure this is a sounding board that not only makes sense to men, but women. And
yes,
that was the key with each one of these pieces. I mean, I believe, honestly, every chapter could ultimately become a book in itself. There's so much denseness in it. But I also wanted to make sure, it wasn't that big. Now, that it was something where we went, I can get through this. And my best friend did the layout. He was I've known him since college, so he kind of knew me. And then I worked to get the graphics done and made sure I had rights for the graphics, which, I had to pay artists to do a bunch of things because my original artwork wasn't that. And so it has quite a few graphics in it and pieces. But yeah, that's it. And then what's amazing is I found a book, and I don't have it right here, but the book is called Why They Kill. And it's a book studying tragically criminals that have been viewed as unrecoverable, that have done extreme things, okay, where they're like, we don't see a way to rehabilitate them. And in the book, he talks about almost the negative version of the positive version of what I did, that to get a human being to this unrecoverable state requires a initiation into a group and then mentoring beyond it. And I went, oh my gosh, the dark side is running really well. But the bright side, we aren't even having a conversation about it because we're so afraid that we might help some men and boys that will take something away from women. We're afraid to even have a conversation. I put this down at a business meeting, and as soon as I did, a woman comes up and goes, where's the women's version? You see, that unconscious hit. We can't have any room.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
the problem is, if we don't have room for men and boys, we have less room for women. And when you talk to young women trying to date today and their concerns and what's going on in society, it's proved itself. That's why people like you, I thought, well, this is kind of evocative. I'm not sure I want to get it out. I've stayed on my business path. And people like you said, you must get this out. We have to have this conversation.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. And I know that part of the passion that you have behind this is connected to one of mine, and that is the fact that we were so grateful to have you as a speaker last year at our suicide prevention event because we know that there's this huge percentage of suicides happening in this country are men and boys. I mean, young people are starting as young as 10 years old to decide that it's not worth living here anymore. And what was the percentages? Like 70 to 80% of suicides are guys?
I'm smiling because I love the person. What will happen is when you give these statistics, there'll be someone that go, yeah, but what about the women? You see, it's so ingrained in us, in both men and women, that the males are disposable. We can't even see it. It's a visceral reaction. This is what this shows, because when you open this up, see, if you're really committed to us all working together, you have to look at sides that aren't comfortable. This opens up something in the unsaid that, to me, has the potential of really profounding, improving relationships to everyone. And you saw in the kickoff, I mean, more than one woman said, I wish I knew this while I was raising my sons. Well, they're adults and you can still apply. And they've come back to say, I'm now understanding stuff with my adult son that I didn't realize, because I have a gift in hearing what's not said in certain domains and giving words for it. And it's not in everything. It's like certain things that go, oh, and giving words to it, men will say, oh, yeah, that speaks to me. Oh, I feel I'm heard here.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite stories, because I love personal development things, is I was in a bookstore years ago. Those are, for younger people, those are places where they sell physical books. And I was in a bookstore in the self-help area, and a woman walks up and she says, why aren't more men here? And I said, well, you really want to know? And she said, yeah. I said, well, there's a hidden message above all these books that say more ways to make men wrong. because the truth is, most men, they aren't naturally drawn to it, but also most have experienced self-help books with, I finally found out, honey, what's wrong with you. And that I think that wasn't what she wanted to hear, but it might be what she needed to hear. And
Wow.
I want to state, Cheyenne, I'm so blessed because growing up in DC with a mother who really was almost like a Jane Addams. She was an activist for the voice of people who couldn't be heard. And she was a pioneer in child labor laws. It goes back, you can see the videos. I've done research. I believe she actually was the catalyst for child labor laws that exist today. I mean, really was. She was an activist for African American rights and opportunities, and even did something where the Klan burned a cross on the president's front lawn because of an article she wrote that got in the paper.
Wow.
And she was an advocate for more opportunities for women, which I am then and still. I mean, both. We have to have room for both.
Yes.
I grew up in DC around a very critical time to be exposed to a lot of things that gave me a foundation to go, wait a second, there's another piece missing here. And I also had made myself into what I call the anti-male. See, the problem is, if all men are bad and a young man buys into that, he makes himself into the anti-male.
Yeah.
Well, then his core is damaged. He's damaged his own core. And that's what I had bought into in my own psyche. and it creates a train wreck. It's kind of like if a young man, quote, embraces his feminine side before he makes peace with the core of the masculine, it's a train wreck in his system. And now you've got a passive aggressive male that is potentially violent to women and potentially violent to society. And I've met men literally tell me that. My mother made sure I was sensitive and did all this with women, but I learned to hate men and myself.
Oof,
and so
gosh.
that's where I started to uncover what is the piece that's missing that we've got to grab hold of. And it's still time. I mean, mothers can have a conversation with their adult sons, but you have to give up being right. If you really want transformation, you have to give up being right. Tragically, some people are going to have to give up that maybe they were wrong too. I didn't like facing the fact that I was so wrong in understanding things. Especially if you've fought hard in one way. It's like the old Far Side sign where the guy's pushing on the door and he realizes it says pull, but he doesn't read it. It can be very disruptive, and I have deep compassion for it. But when women have the commitment to their sons and their grandkids, they're willing to go beyond. Maybe they don't know everything. And when men are just as equal, this is not just a thing. Remember, I had made myself in a man that was always fighting at the expense of men for women's rights. Not both, but at the expense. I was the first to have the shaming joke about men and getting acknowledgement for this. When I did the first men's weekend, I asked the guy at the end of it, what do you tell women? And he said, I tell them to stay away from the snags. And I said, what's that? And he looked right at me as though he was looking through me. He said, sensitive new age men. I think he said sensitive new age men. They have experience of heart but no spine, and they're dangerous to women. And I went, my God, I had made myself into that.
Yeah.
I had made myself into. I had formed it through all the little personal development books and cheering on how evil all the men are. And then I realized, oh my gosh, unless I do this inner work, I'm sentenced to this. And I don't really serve anyone.
Right. Whew, absolutely. And again, I am grateful that you finally got this out there, got it published. I think it is absolutely amazing. And, to me, what my Facebook group that this video will be in is called Unity for Wellness and Peace. And you can't have unity, you can't have wellness, and we cannot have peace on this planet unless we are valuing both sides of many equations, and that includes the male versus female equation. So we've got to value both. We've got to find the balance. Maybe that's the Libra in me. I'm all about finding the balance. But I recognize your value and what you're bringing to the table, Martin. And I'm just kind of curious as we wind this down. Do you have 2 or 3 things? Because I loved at the end of your book that you made a statement that I've been saying all along. I say we are the miracles we're waiting for. And that's basically what you said too, was we can't wait on other people to fix this piece of society that's obviously broken. We've got to stand up and do it. So I'd love for you to give people is there 2 or 3 things that come to your mind that people can do to start to engage in helping our men to live in a more healthy and balanced way in our world?
The first would be just ask them some questions about their accomplishments, because that's a safer place to start. Don't ask them to share their feelings, because that's the place that men are most vulnerable, and they often have had wounds where a man or a woman attacked them from that. You see, a woman sharing her feelings with another woman is different. I don't want to say it's the same, but a man sharing his feelings makes him vulnerable to shame, and men are much more vulnerable to shame than women often are. And again, this is not black and white. This is more like a bell curve, an 80% bell curve. So this is not like one is this and the other is that. But the beginning thing would be ask about some of their stories and have some conversations. And the biggest thing would be understand that maybe men grieve differently than women. I reference that in the book as well. The first thing is like over the holidays is, saying something like, Dad, I'd love to hear a little bit of some of the things you've accomplished and things you've done in your life, and just start to listen beyond yourself on it. And for men, watch if you're the superhero of there's a difference between me standing up for my wife and fairness in society and attacking everything as though all men are bad. And if you're a guy doing that, you should be suspicious of yourself, because you may find relationships don't hold together. Women don't feel safe in your life and you can't figure out why. In fact, I want to tell one story. One guy who was like this, he met and his marriage was breaking up. And I said, you've done everything she wants, and all she wants to do is claw your eyes out. And he went, yeah. I said, well, you're not safe to her because there isn't a core developed. There isn't something that's solid there. And it was wonderful because he's in a new marriage and he's taken that knowledge and learned from it, and they get along great. Awesome. So, this is the other thing is there's no one answer. It's $14. Buy the darn book, read it. I priced it as even the hardcovers like 17, most are over 22. I made it. I think one session in therapy will cost a little bit more. Not that I'm against that, but I mean, just like get it, read it. It's amazing. And then make notes in the back as well. And then, like you said, the toughest thing in this book was the Appendix 5, because it is, where do we go from here? And I wasn't going to write that. I said, I don't know enough. I can't offer suggestions. And the person editing goes, you've got to give them something. You got to start. And then we were close to publishing and I didn't have it done. I had the sections, but they weren't done. So I went, I've got to do this. And I really sat down and thought through like as an adult man, as a young man, as a son, as a wife, as a sister or brother, as an aunt, as a teacher, as an uncle. Those are all in there as at least a starter seed. Yes, the old thing is, if we want a better society, we might have to be uncomfortable and learn some things on both sides.
Yes, absolutely. And I know the book is available for Kindle, audiobook. You got paperback, hardback. I think you got
hardcover. Yeah, all of them. And I have a vision in the next coming years based on making it bilingual, because I've already gotten such a powerful response from people who are bilingual saying this also maps on. So that's that's a vision for it. Amazing. The biggest thing is, why not get this before the holidays? Why not actually just take a look? Just give it a try. Just imagine. Absolutely. Am I committed to better relationships, or am I committed to being right? If you're committed to being right, save your time and don't buy the book, because I know no hope for you. But if you're committed to possibly seeing something beyond my own, Cheyenne, you've known me for many years. One of my highlights of my life is when I'm proven wrong. Now, it doesn't mean it's always comfortable, but those are the moments where I grow. And this is for men and women to read. Mothers, fathers. Last I want to just say is surprisingly grandmothers. Talk about people concerned about it. One of them said, I'm really worried that my grandkids are going to be ripe for prison because they're not setting consequences and things. I said, you should be. Read this.
It's true. It's true. And, the things you said about the dark side has this much more figured out than the rest of us do. And it's so true. I mean, I've worked inside prisons, and, I've had guys break down and cry in my classes saying, why weren't you there to teach me this? Or why wasn't there a mentor there to help me through that? Or, it's a real thing. There is no doubt. So again, thank you, Martin, for your work, for your passion, for your desire to, and your bravery, your courage to put this out here, because we know there's a lot of pushback in society on so many things at this point in time. But it's okay. We still have to speak our truth. We still have to be authentic. And that is the absolute number one thing I feel when I'm listening to you talk, Martin. You are authentically passionate about this. So thank you. And
you're welcome.
We'll make sure your links are under the video everywhere that we post it. And hopefully folks will decide to get a hold of this, because we are the miracles we're waiting for. We can make a difference. And thank you for providing a starting point for people to do that.
Thank you very much. And thanks to my wonderful bride that always inspires me to be a better man.
You guys have a great relationship, and it's a beautiful thing. All right. Well, thanks to all of our change makers for tuning in. Hope you learned something interesting today, and you can learn a whole lot more if you get the book. So take care. We'll see you all in the next interview. Until then, have a fabulous rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Take care.